Hi, this is Bethany Johnston, and today we're going to talk about the new monitoring app called GrassSnap. And I'm just going to take you through the process of how to use it and set up a pasture and view that data. So this is a new app that we've developed here through UNL Extension, and we collaborated with the Nebraska Grazing Lands Coalition and the NRCS. And myself, Cindy Tessler, Jay Jenkins, and Jerry Valesky all collaborated on this app, and we're hoping that it will make monitoring easier. There's a lot of good information out there, but sometimes it seems complicated and you're not really sure where to start. So we hope that GrassSnap will help you through that process. The reason we developed GrassSnap is we need to understand that there's changes that are happening from every management decision that we make. And throw in drought and heat and early frost, and that all affects how our pastures are reacting. And so we need to make sure that the management decisions that we're making are having the outcomes that we're looking for. So we can use GrassSnap to monitor our pastures just on average, or we can use it to see how it's actually working to heal out problem areas. And one of the things that GrassSnap does is actually captures photographs. So you can see here, this is pictures from a rancher, and he actually filled in a blowout and in there. Before is that we need to have epoxy to nail in the bottom. Photo plots. Use some reference. Year. So we want to have permanent field markers, so when we stand at that field marker and look out, we can get the same view year after year. The other thing we want to collect is any data that might have affected that pasture. So that we made a data sheet, and I don't know if you guys can see it up here, but this rancher wanted to see an increase in warm season grasses, and he also grazing. But you should high grasshopper counts. You may have had an early freeze or things like that. So these are the pictures that we're hoping to get with these GrassSnap. So this is a photo point looking out, and you can just see the differences in this pasture over time. These are the pictures looking down, or the photo plots. And again, over time, you can see how the plants have filled in. We have more desirable species, and the ground cover is filling in as well. So when you look at your photo point, this is your general landscape view, and it's called a photo point because you're going to pick one point on the horizon and then center your picture on there every year. Photo plots are pictures looking down, and this gives you a little bit more detail about the area and a little bit more detail about the species composition as well. On GrassSnap, you can take one photo point and then up to 5 photo plots for one transect. So GrassSnap is available for Apple and Android smart devices, and you can go ahead and download that at the iTunes stores or at Google Play, and just search for GrassSnap, and it should come up. And GrassSnap is free to download. We've had some grants through the Nebraska Grazing Lands Coalition and UNL Extension to fund this, and so it's free to download. But I guess you can pay us back by letting us know how it worked for you. We'd like to hear back from you, so either you can rate us on the app page or email me your comments as well. So with GrassSnap, we tried to take our experience helping producers set up monitoring systems and then make it simple and easy to use. So some of the features of GrassSnap is that it will actually photo stamp your pictures with the pasture name, the GPS location, the date it was monitored, and then what direction you were looking as well. GrassSnap will actually organize and store all of your pictures and data under the Albums button, and this is a huge time saver. When I helped monitor 45 pastures with my husband, I spent 8 hours on the computer just renaming my pictures because we had so many from those pastures. So it's a huge time saver as far as naming those pastures and getting them organized. The GPS coordinates are saved on GrassSnap, so you can go to the maps under List View and actually pull off all of your GPS coordinates as well. We worked with the Nebraska NRCS, so GrassSnap will fulfill the requirements for the NRCS CSP PLT02. It's a monitoring enhancement activity. These are a couple of good resources if you're getting started with monitoring, or if you want to find out more about GrassSnap and how to monitor. There's a GrassSnap website, and then there's also a NEB guide that we wrote to supplement GrassSnap that just talks about the different methods that you can use to get started with monitoring. And we also recorded a webinar on these different monitoring techniques, so you could view that as well. A lot of times when new things come out, I hear from ranchers, well, I'm just not very techy. Well, I'm not either, and when we first went to develop this app, I couldn't even turn on my iPad. We got them issued from our dean, and I couldn't even run the darn thing. And so somebody said, well, it's easy enough for a 2-year-old to use, so I had a 2-year-old. I downloaded some free apps, and come to find out it's true. It's easy enough for a 2-year-old to run. So besides GrassSnap, I have a lot of apps there for small children so they can show me how to run this. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to GrassSnap on the iPad so you guys can see how we use this. And so once you go to the iTunes Store or Google Play and you download GrassSnap, so you can just type in GrassSnap and find it that way, it will appear on your iPad as an icon. So just go ahead and click on that to open it. And there's 4 buttons on GrassSnap. The first one is Add a New Transect, the Albums button, Maps, and Updated Grid. So the first time you go in to use GrassSnap and monitor a pasture, you're going to click on the Add a New Transect button. That's where you're going to get started. But I'm going to go ahead and show you the Albums and the Map buttons because this is where the data will actually be stored. So I've went ahead and ran quite a few tests and in the office and out in the pasture, so you can see all my pastures are listed here, and they're in their folders. And if I go ahead and click on one, it will bring up that folder. So when I go in next year and monitor, I will have a 2014 folder for my pasture R22A. So I can go ahead and open that, and you can see it has my trend score on there. That's what we collected. And then also it says, you know, that we just moved out of that pasture a week ago. So you can actually look at that and see those comments. If we can find another one here. And so if you click on the pictures, it will actually bring up a bigger view of that picture. And again, you can see that it has the pasture name there, and what we used was the NRCS map for these pastures. So our pasture name is R30, and we took that picture the 13th of August of last year, and this is our first plot looking down. It also has our GPS coordinates on there, and then the direction that we're looking. And your GPS coordinates, you need to remember that these are going to be converted to decimal degrees in GrassSnap. So if you have a handheld GPS device, you will have to go into your user settings and change your settings to decimal degrees. My Garmin unit was defaulted to degrees, minutes, seconds, and so I had to go in there and called the help desk and got it switched over. So my coordinates will now match what's on GrassSnap. So when you go to export your data, you can do it through the iTunes store, or you can also do it real quickly on Android as well. But say I don't have internet and I want to get my data transferred, I can go to Edit and then select my pastures and click on the box with the arrow on it. And I can actually save these to my camera roll, and then I can plug my smart device in like a flash drive and get my pictures down that way too. The other options on here are to clear photos from this transect. And so if I'm done monitoring, I can go in here and it will clear out the photos and make a little bit more room on my smart device. So you want to make sure that you have these folders saved to your computer, probably under my file somewhere, and before you go in and clear those photos out. So if I have 45 pastures and I've monitored for 5 years, you can see how over time that's going to really eat up the memory on my smart device. The other option that you have too is to delete an album. So let's say I'm going to, this was a test one that I did, the Smith pasture. So once I delete the album, I'm never going to be able to go into that pasture and get my original photo point or my GPS data. So the only time you want to delete an album is if you're doing a test run, or if you're sure that you're never going to monitor that pasture again. So say you were renting some ground and doing some monitoring, and then that land sold and you lost your lease. Well, I could go ahead and delete that album. Okay, so that's our albums button. Our maps button, if you go ahead and click on that, you can see on our map view it will actually bring up our sites, and we can click on the pin and it will tell us the name of that monitoring site. And so you can zoom in and get pretty close on where your pastures are at. So if you have cell service, you might be able to use this to navigate. But for us out here in the Sandhills, we don't have cell service, and I would have to use a GPS unit to find my location. So if you click on List View at the top, this is where a lot of the useful information and time-saving information is. So for me, I can go and enter my pastures into my Garmin and put those GPS locations in and navigate right to that field marker. So this is a real time saver and something that I think will help you guys when you go back to monitor. So I showed you the albums and the map button. What we're going to do next is actually walk through adding a new transect. So I have a virtual pasture set up here in my office. So we're going to go ahead and take some pictures. So if I'm at my pasture, at my permanent field marker, I'm going to go ahead and add a new transect. So it's asking me to enter my pasture name. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the Smith pasture and hit done. And so this name is going to be photo stamped on all of my pictures as well as my folder. So we want to make sure that the name's correct. And then it's going to actually tell me to take a photo looking out, or a photo point. So I'm standing at my field marker. I have my perspective pole out there. And then I'm just going to hit the white circle to take a picture. And you can see on mine that I have cell service here, so my GPS location automatically went in there. If I don't have cell service or wireless, it will ask me for those GPS coordinates, and then I can manually enter those in. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this photo. And then it tells me to take a picture looking down, or a photo point. So I can go ahead and do that and keep. And then I'm going to add a new plot and take a picture. And so you can take these plots out from your field marker, or measure out, and you can take up to 5 photo plots. So you can see I have a few pictures remaining, but I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm done. And we're going to move on to the grazing indexes. So if you're in the Nebraska Sandhills, we have a grazing index for Sandhills. We have a grazing index for the Nebraska Western Native Cool Range. And then we also have some information on brome and irrigated pastures. And what we found is brome and irrigated pastures don't respond well to a grazing index, but there's some management information on there. So since I'm in the Sandhills, I'll go ahead and pick Sandris. And if you have questions on what the categories mean, there's an eye with a blue circle around it for more information. So you can click on there anytime you see that eye, and it will give you more information about that. So I can go ahead and pick when I was in this pasture. So let's say I was grazing it in June. Our precipitation, we're still a little bit dry, but we had good residual. We still have some grass standing out in the pasture. Then over here, I can type in my comments. So I can put how many inches of rain we've had today. I can put how many pairs I had in, put in my grazing records. So I can say I was in here from June 1st to the 30th. And so even if you aren't in Nebraska, or you aren't using a grazing index, go ahead and either use the Sandris or the Western Nebraska grazing index just for a place to put your comments, because these will be saved with your pictures. So you can leave the categories blank and just type in comments, and that data will be saved with it. So you could put whatever data you want in there. Go ahead and hit done. And GrassSnap's always going to ask you if you're sure that you're done, because once you exit out, you can't go back and edit that information. Okay, so if you're doing the CSP, you're going to want to put in an apparent trend. So you can press the ecological site and choose which one that you want. We're going to be in the sands. The reference plant community is going to be different for every pasture, so you'll have to decide what that is for you. For us, we're going to say it's switchgrass. And then we're a little bit below normal. Again, if you're not sure about the ranking system, you can tap on that blue eye and it will bring up the information. So I can go ahead and mark my changes on here. And see how we're doing. And again, we can put our comments over here and it will save that data. put that we were in there from June 1st to the 30th, and then hit done. And so once we have went through that process, so we took the photo point, we took the photo plot or plots, we filled out our grazing indexes and apparent trend. Now we've went through all those steps. It's been saved, and it's going to be under the Albums button. So go ahead and return to the main menu, and you can see if we click on Albums and go to the Smith pasture, we can see all of our pictures on there, and then also our data. So we have our Sandris grazing index and then our trend score. And again, like I said, this is a great place to just use that comment box. So if I wasn't in the Sandhills or I didn't want to use the trend score, I could just leave those blank, those columns blank, the seasons of defoliation, precipitation, and residual herbage. I could leave those blank and then just type in my comments, and all that data will be saved with my pictures. So that is adding a new pasture, and you're only going to do that one time for each pasture. You only use add a new transect the first time you set up that monitoring site. The next time you go back to that pasture, what you're going to choose is update existing. And so I'm going to choose the Smith pasture. And then you can see it has my original location and my current location on there. If I'm, again, if I don't have cell service, I'm going to have to, I wouldn't have the current location in there, but it will always keep my original location. So make sure that when you enter that GPS information that it's correct, because it's going to photo stamp it on every picture after that. So on update existing, one of the features that I really like about this is called the overlay. And the overlay button allows you to go to your field marker, and if I press the overlay, so this is the next year, what it did is actually saved my original photo point. So when I stand at my field marker, I should be able to line up the silhouettes of the hills until they're pretty close to matching, and then I can take that picture. I can get my picture taken. There we go. Okay, so you can see how close I was to actually taking and lining up the silhouette of those hills. So this really helps you when you go to go back the next year and compare pictures, because they should be almost identical, and the only changes you would see is actually in the range condition. So let's go ahead and keep that. And then again, we can start taking our photo plots looking down. Okay, and then we're going to say done, just for time's sake. And so we would go through the same steps. We could put in a grazing index. Right now I'm going to skip. We could add an apparent trend score and put that in. Again, I'm going to skip that. And so now our album's been saved, and we can go back to the main menu and view those pictures. One thing to remember is and so you want to make sure that if you went out and monitored and that night it hailed, go back the next day to monitor that hailstorm. But if you do it the same day, it'll actually override and overwrite those pictures that you took previously. The other thing to remember, like I said before, is to make sure that your GPS handheld device, if you don't have cell service, that it's set for decimal degrees. Because if it's not, those locations will not match up. So these are some steps that you can go through to get started with GrassSnap. There's also the GrassSnap website that has videos and more information on monitoring. And again, if you have questions or comments, you can give me a call or shoot me an email, and I will try to help you through the process of using GrassSnap. But what we're hoping is that it's simple enough for even the beginner to be able to go out and use, and it's also flexible enough for you to use in any monitoring situation. So if you have any questions, again, feel free to contact me or go to the GrassSnap website, and there might be some answers on there as well. So we hope that you go out and download GrassSnap for your Apple and Android devices, and that you have great success with your monitoring program.